be better than that. Cool. So let's talk something in details. Could you, I know you got our portfolio as tons of companies, startups. So could you share a little bit about us, about that to us, like what startups or some special, like something that can representing a future technology or trend of the things. I'm not saying that there's only no the things you mentioned the best one or something, but just share a little bit about your startup portfolio, to let people have some idea or have some just to highlight something. How about Xin? You go first.
Yes. So just to clarify, would you like us to probably share a few of our investment?
Just share one or two startup in your portfolio, like to let people have some ideas. So. Okay.
Yeah, happy to do so. So I think one startup which is very interesting and quite representative is called Hyzon, Hyzon. So basically they are hydrogen trucks, and it's actually a Chinese founder, and he come to study in the US and then worked in the US and then set up this company, and it's a great company actually. So the background of that is for light duty vehicles, the electrification is certainly the trend, but for heavy duty vehicles we don't have yet kind of a final say of what will be the solution. That it could be natural gas, it could be it could be battery, if the battery could become lighter and higher energy density.
Sure.
But hydrogen will be certainly a very promising solution for this. So we invested in this company, and that's also representing why the energy startup can be it's a challenge actually field, because for hydrogen trucks to work, you need to have supply chain to producing the fuel cell, you need to have the OEM to get into the business to producing the vehicles, and at the same time you need clients to really buy those vehicles to have hydrogen fuel stations to be ready. So all this, it's kind of like an ecosystem. You need founders to really not only have a technology excellence, but also have a good vision about how to bring all this together, set up the value chain to make sure the business is going to work. So that's one of our investment last year. So and they're doing quite well with good traction. Probably another one I like to share, it's also representative, it's called Deep Branch. It's the last of our investment, and it's actually using the CO2 and using the micro kind of biotechnology to producing alternate protein and using it for the fish feed. So I think very often we come across this kind of companies and people ask us, why is this relevant to us? Probably it's not relevant directly to what we do, but then if you put it into the global like carbon challenge, and then the agriculture industry, it's one of the largest sectors that we have to address. So as a corporate venture, we sometimes can go a little bit beyond the frontier to test what is happening there, and also it's quite relevant to us in some sense because it use CO2 and hydrogen as a feedstock, as the intake parts of the equation and produce the alternate protein. So we're allowed to have a small ticket investment just to learn and to observe. And for this kind of investment, we're very cautious, and we like to have financial VC, and we like to have corporates who are their bread and butter in this kind of industry to be on the cap table, so that to some extent they are specialists in this area, and we are there to really learn. Yeah, I pass to you, Ji.
Thank you, Xin. That's a wonderful sharing. Haibin, I know that from the program you just mentioned, it's sorry, I did check the name.
GCN.
Yes, it's a GCN. Actually, I checked the portfolio. The tons of companies, mostly focused on the energy storage, right?
Well, it's actually cover a range of themes. There's some energy storage. There's some on demand management, like how do you manage grid if you have DERs. And there are also some on hydrogen generation, for example, membranes, electrolyzers. There's also quite a bit on EV charging as well. So I mentioned a few. Yeah, it's actually, one of the greatest part of my job is, before the pandemic, certainly, was going and see those companies in person. It's just a total joy for me professionally, and also
really?
very stimulating. So I mentioned a few. One company is called Blue Dot Photonics, and it's a company based in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
What they do is essentially trying to revolutionize how do you make solar panels. Yeah. So right now, solar panel making is still a pretty heavy manufacturing process. In MIT, it's kind of unrelated. One time I was there, and the professor John Hart showed some videos, how fast people can print newspapers nowadays. Yeah, it's just extreme speed. They're printing newspapers, kind of on the roll. Yeah. And so this company have a similar idea, to print solar films, almost like printing newspapers. Yeah. So that's very interesting. The two founders, one was a former consultant from McKinsey, and the other is an engineer from the National Renewable Energy Lab. So that's one. The other one that I like a lot is a company in Silicon Valley called Span. It's a serial entrepreneur. He was a former project manager in Tesla for the Powerwall. The third company now. What they do is that essentially a new generation, a total revamp of the circuit breaker that most of us find in our garage. Yeah. So it's almost like iPad that controls all the circuits in your house that can moderate, say solar panel, batteries. How do you, make this kilowatt goes to this appliance, and that kilowatt hour goes to the other appliance, and then interact with the grid. And finally, I just quickly mentioned a company in Brooklyn that we just made an investment called Air Company. And they essentially a direct air capture company. And they make really high value products from the CO2 they absorb from the air. And that high value product is called vodka. They're already selling the vodkas, in bars, restaurants in Northeast. Vodka.
You mean the vodka? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So you can imagine, vodka is a bit more expensive than water, and certainly more expensive than gasoline. Yeah. But very often that's where innovation happens. You have one sector, you make innovation, and then that sector can have an influence on other sectors. So now we are working with them to see how that technology can be used for energy applications as well. A really cool company in Brooklyn. It's a new investment, and I really look forward to one day to go and see them when the travel restrictions are lifted.
Oh yeah. I think that's really amazing things happened, and we can see it from the startups. Very interesting. Yeah. Tony, do you have something to? Thank you, Haibin. Tony, do you have something to share from your portfolio?
Sure. Yeah, I think before I talk about the specific portfolio, I think in this context, right, like how do we deal with greenhouse gas emission, CO2 emission? I think from what I'm seeing is for peer oil and gas companies or like us, there are typically three approaches. So depend on the time frame. So the first approach is really efficiency improvement. So basically, by doing things more effectively, we can reduce the emission. The second is this overall trend of the energy transition, right? So like electrification, basically, like in the midterm.
Right.
So we see a lot of things people are talking about, hey, can we generate electricity from solar and then use that electricity to do certain things that people now are burning gasolines or whatever doing. And the third is really kind of like a longer term, like new material, totally new material, not based on the hydrocarbon, all this or that, new chemistry, new material, which is definitely a much longer term. So if we use that lens to understand, so because we are a relatively new player in the space, we typically, we do not have as strong portfolio as Total or Shell, but in the past few years, we assemble, we had 4 startups, made direct investment in 4 startups, and also investing in 3 funds. So I think all of them have some different angles or relevance to these 3 major trends or topics we are talking about. I think the most straightforward, I would say probably is ESS. In my background is over here. Yeah, ESS. So that's the company doing flow battery. So they are doing their focus market is long duration energy storage. So basically they have ion-based chemistry, which is very safe and very cheap. And they try to target, like say, the 4 to 12 hour time frame where you need you generate energy from the renewable source and then release the energy at a different time when you actually need the energy. So I think that's a very interesting and unique portfolio, and we have strong confidence in how it will go from there. As for the other three, so Arrival is a 3D printing company, so they can make a high performance carbon fiber composite for high-end applications. So basically the relevance over there is definitely the efficiency improvement. So I think the other side of this story is, although you hear people talk a lot about how we try to reduce CO2 emission, this or that, but they're based on my understanding, probably, please correct me if I'm wrong, how to do the right carbon accounting is still very tricky. Different company, different country, different standard have a different way. Right. So you may actually hear people talking about wide range of numbers they claim they can do the emission, but that's very tricky and hard, difficult to differentiate one from another, what actually they can help us. I think this whole field is still very new. I think this is something that as an investor, as a user of the technology, I think we may need to spend a little more time of understand how does that part work, and everyone can be on the same page so that we can gauge the emission on the same level.
That's true. That's true. I heard that in terms of the net zero emission pledge, some countries actually claim the different parts. Some say like we just count CO2. Some include the methane or other stuff. So that's totally different. And also like Microsoft or other companies, that they will count for the historical emissions. Some just count for the present. It's also different. I think in terms of the more details, I guess there must be more differences. So yeah, that could be an open question. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I agree. Okay. It's a field I think is ripe for innovation actually, right? There's a lot of companies working very hard to count carbon. Yeah. Right? If you say I use CCUS, or if we use nature-based solutions to offset carbon, it has to be credible. Yeah, and a lot of organizations as well are working hard to develop those as well. And there's a lot of new technology that are being developed. So I can see that maybe at some point a set of, or maybe a few set of standards needs to emerge from those.
Right.
So, yeah. So to win the trust of both governments and also civil society. Yeah, exactly how much carbon you release, how much carbon you sequester. Yeah, things like that.
Yeah. So I guess maybe that's also a field that for startups, like you're creating some ways to calculate or helping people in a way. Okay, great. So I think the panel time is in now, and we would like to leave some time for the audience to get a chance to directly talk with our panelists. Okay. Oh, there's one question from David called ask Dr. Xinma, what's the name of your firm? I think it's Total, right? Or what's the specific name Total. Of your? Yeah.
So the group is called Total, and it's in the process of changing the name to Total Energies, and it's just subject to the shareholders' approval. And the division that I work on is Total Carbon Neutrality Venture. Thanks for the question.
Thank you for your answer. Right, and there's one guy, I think also from David. Okay, let's finish your question together. He asked the storage about the pumped hydro storage. So any comments on this pumped hydro storage? Did you you have a portfolio or some you have some comments on this technology for storage? Yeah. So whatever, any relevant stuff.
Yeah, I can probably, because I talk about ESS, there we are talking about long duration storage, right? Pumped hydro, I think first in general is a relatively mature technology group.
Yeah.
Right. We see the big water dam, this and that. It has certain limitations, right? You need to have the right geographical design, and you need to have a certain amount of water and then different pieces. So my understanding is, at least here in the States, pipe hydro is still the majority of the region.
Mm. Oh, I can't hear you, Tony.
Storage. That is for sure. There's no doubt about it. But then the challenge for is for where
Tony, I couldn't hear you. Can you guys hear him?
It looks like he may have connection speed issues.
Okay, yeah, so let's, when he come back, we can continue this topic. So, Haibin, you have some comments on the pump hydro?
Yeah, sure. Although I have to make a disclaimer, I'm not an expert at all in pumped hydro. The only thing I know is that it's relatively mature technology, and I think Tony already mentioned that it has a lot of advantage, but also have some limitation like geography. You have to have an aquifer, you have to have a elevation difference and all that there. What I'll say is that innovation does not only mean technology innovation, right? Especially in energy. So there needs to be technology innovation, business model innovation, and even policy innovation as well. Sometimes, especially in the US, we could get stuck into a bit of a mindset that policy or is not something that can be innovated, but it actually should be as well. And I've seen, in the space of energy, there's startups that is focused on technology. There are also startups that's focused on project development. That's really a phenomenon I've seen in the past few years, say startups in the Gulf Coast, really trying to develop CCUS projects, thinking about carbon credits as a market. So there's just a lot of innovation in all those spaces. And pumped hydro, I guess mostly is a project development arena now, more than technology development in my view as a non-expert.
Got you.
Yeah, my apologies. I think my internet was unstable a little bit.
Not
sure where I got cut out. I think I heard what had been mentioned for the later part. Yes, I agree. There's definitely new innovation, new technology I've seen. But then from venture investment perspective, how do we actually leverage the new growth area? That's kind of a question mark. If the new technology, new innovation can happen and help address that, I think yes, we should be open to any kind of innovation.
Yeah, just quickly add as well, if you pay attention to some of the news, there are really a lot of capital pouring into project and infrastructure in the current times. I think just the other day I saw a big fundraise by BlackRock in renewables energy investment. Bank of America just the other day, they have $1.5 trillion to invest in infrastructure, and all the energy companies also pouring a lot of capital. Shell is in our strategy update earlier this year, I think in February, we're planning to invest $2 to $3 billion a year in new energies. So banks, energy companies, private equity firms, there's just a lot of energy, quote unquote energy pouring into this space to invest in infrastructure as well.
Oh yeah. So I guess we can see the change rapidly. Great. Okay, so there's a question, and I think from Aramco. I think you guys can all see that. So he she asked, is it impossible to install charging facilities in gas station? It's impossible in China to install charging facilities in gas station. But how that situation outside of China? I'm not sure this as well. So, but it's just, I think it's an application of the charging. Do you guys have some idea? So, charging facilities. I mean, this gets for the vehicles, right? Electric vehicles. Dr. Xu, Habin?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I don't really know China market that much, just because of not have a lot of access. But I could imagine actually EV charging can be possible in station in China. Even I think I saw some news. Sinopec has some new stations in Shanghai that are the huge retail convenience store. They have EV charging, they have diesel, they have all kind of options for consumers, right? So Shell certainly is doing the same in Europe quite a bit, and also in the United States as well. So in our view of the stations in the future that just really can offer a lot of options for the consumers. So both gasoline, diesel, but also EV charging and hydrogen all together as well. And now I think recently Shell also made a acquisition of a company in Europe called Ubitricity, and that's essentially a very simple charger on the road as well. So that's very convenient. And it's an area that Shell have been and will continue to make a lot of investments in.
Probably just to share a little bit on this subject. I think there was some concerns from the security and safety reason. So the Chinese authorities, sometimes regional, sometimes it's local, could have concerns on this. For example, fuel delivery, like mobile charging, mobile fuel delivery, on-demand fuel delivery is allowed elsewhere, but there was, sometime in China it was forbidden. So there were also concerns about the package of battery in the station, that the fire hazard and things like that. But definitely, as Dr. Xu has said, it is certainly possible, and sometimes, especially for the commercial fleet operator, it actually makes sense to have the petrol station, to having EV charging and maybe the natural gas and other solutions. It's actually one of the regulatory requirements in India for the petrol stations. They will have to have alternate fuel in their stations in order to have the license to operate. So we are the same, the state petrol stations, for example, in France, we have started to stop to having stations in the city center in Paris. And we are thinking different ways to convert them, for example, into the mobility hub, where people can come to take a micro mobility vehicles, have their charging, have their battery swapped, or have their different solutions here. So that's certainly a very interesting area with a lot of very genuine, innovative ideas going on. Pass to you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Okay, there's a question. So I think from Miao, and she asked, what kind of data we expect in energy transition, such as in carbon capture? What kind of data? What technical skills will be used for during this energy transition? For individuals, what is not changed in this energy transition? This I don't quite understand the first question, but the second, third is like no, I got the idea. So I don't know who want to answer this question.
I'm not sure if I understand correctly, but just to probably, if it's talking about data, I think certainly data is extremely important for the energy transition. Could give one example. I think Dr. Xu mentioned that earlier on as well. It's for the grid, since now we have more and more renewable energies, and they are much more difficult to manage than the very stable kind of thermal power plant we have in the past. And there's also decentralized production and consumption. So in this environment, the grid become much more challenged to balance. And that's where you need data to be able to forecast the production, forecast the weather, and also forecast the demand side, what's the pattern of consumption in order to stabilize. So that's extremely important and useful. And otherwise, some other thing we can observe is it's somewhere we can see there's a data kind of sea kind of environment when in some countries you developed countries you see lots of data, but it can be the opposite. In sometimes you see data desert, and in some developing countries, but there the genuine innovation is needed in a very kind of low cost. That's where we see a lot of like Indian startup just they just have the very great solution with like a impressive small amount of fund they can carry on with innovation. And the second, I don't know if I understand the question about individuals. Actually, I think that's individual responsibility. It's a quite interesting and important subject. As like Dr. Sun, Dr. Xu said, it's really everybody has to be on board to addressing this climate issue. But one of the challenges, people has a lot of well-intended kind of determination to make things happen, but sometimes might not do the right choice. For consumers, consumers has to be aware of their consumption power, their decisions when choosing from one product from the other one. Those has to be should be well informed and the right decision in order for the whole system to operate and transit in the right way, so that money, as Dr. Xu said, there's a huge amount of money putting in, but we need the right signal and right decision to channel that in the right solution in order not to waste this. So just to give example, actually I like to exchange with my friends. I was like, even my favorite example is in Berlin. And they had the city council actually has this very well-intended solution to kind of helping people to use a kind of bicycle with a little cart in front. You can put your kids or some groceries there, and they have a subsidy for that. And they actually spent, I think, $350,000 for 7 tons of CO2 being saved. So I think, that's a very well-informed country, developed country, and this kind of decision is really, that's something I think at individual level, at the government level and corporate level, at different level, there should be really well-informed. People should kind of trying to learn more about this subject. And that's where I think I really, personally, I think the book from Bill Gates, it's a really wonderful book in a very, very great way. Oh, great. So it's a very simple way and very nicely laid out and very easily communicating with the public to tell what's the problem, what are the tools and technologies we can use. Great, Dr. Sun.
Yeah, so this is something that I think definitely fit with the topic. I think just like Sim said, I haven't finished my reading yet. But as an investor in the space, this is definitely something I need to educate myself. And there are quite a few, I'll say, realistic suggestions for everyone just to act on, whether you're an investor, whether you're an employer, whether you're an employee, whether just as a consumer, how to make informed decisions. I think I really like how Bill Gates is putting it. I would highly encourage everyone do the reading. I haven't finished mine yet, just to make sure. I haven't read the rest, but yeah, I definitely would encourage everyone to read it.
Great.
Yeah, so I'll add a couple of points for this one as well, because not to spend too much time, but just it's a topic I have a lot of passion about. I get asked this question a lot in Shell as well, from say young professionals also. So I think about this a lot. So to answer that, I'll step back a bit, to say, ask ourselves what is most critical for energy transition, right? And then that will translate into what skills we need. So I'm convinced there are 3 critical success factors for energy transition. Number 1 is solutions, right? We need technology innovation, commercial business model innovation, all those solutions or nuggets, if you will. So that's number 1. Number 2 is to integrate those into, say, offering in a large market of tremendous scale as well. The energy is something that just the scale is unprecedented. Yeah, so that's number 2.
Right.
And number 3 is collaboration. I think maybe Xing mentioned earlier about hydrogen truck. right? So that requires collaboration. It needs OEMs, it needs hydrogen producers, it needs the government, it needs all the players to play together to collaborate. So those are the three factors. So translating that to skills, I would argue that what we need would be number one, how do you produce solutions? We still need all the technical skills we need. If you're a mechanical engineer, chemical engineer, geoscientist, economist, whichever, you need to be really, really good at what you do. So that's number one. And number two, for integration, it requires just a lot of project management skills. I think that goes to whichever energy form that we're producing. A project manager in oil and gas is not very different from a project manager, say, in an offshore wind farm. And all those skills are very transferable. And number three, I would like to say is collaboration. And that really means, to me, a good mix of logic and compassion. Yeah, so I was trained as an engineer or scientist myself. I had a lot of thinking in a logical way. But we all know now, society, to talk with society, logic alone is not enough. You have to have compassion as well. That's the other half of the brain that, as engineers, we're not very often very well trained, certainly not for myself. I'll give one example and then I'll finish. I used to talk quite a bit with a group in MIT. I was so impressed. It's called the MIT Environmental Solutions Initiative. And the director, the name is John Fernandez. So he said, we have a board, and on the board, we don't just have academics or senators or industry leaders. We actually also have faith leaders from the church. We also have The Edge from U2. So that's a band from Ireland, right? And so the reason we have those is because energy is a topic that we have to reflect the society. We cannot just have engineers and academic leaders reach out to the society. We also need to have rock band. We need to have church leaders to help with the messaging, interacting with the society. So I would say that's an aspect, MIT students or Shell employees, all of us who may be traditionally more engineering mindset, we really have to develop that thinking of compassion, linking with society, and then speak in their language as well.
Oh, wow, that's really, really wonderful sharing. Thank you, Haibin. It sounds like a jewelry for energy, just ordinary people.
Yeah, it's human nature, right? If you don't gain the trust, no matter how good the solution is, no one will buy it. You have to have the trust first.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I totally echo what Haibin said regarding. So there was one report published by the Schmidt Foundation or Schmidt Future. So that's kind of like the family office by the former Google Eric Schmidt. So his family office has done a report with heavy dedicated research data on the venture activities of hard tech or deep tech. So you can find that report available on market. And one of the key things is in the very first few page, they have kind of like solar system kind of picture. And what shows is the different entities or key players in the space. And one of the angles they point out is something they call storyteller. So basically, this is exactly what Haibin was referring to. So other than the government, the private sector, the public sector, or the universities, how do we weave the hard tech, deep tech technology, the story well? Let them know that this is the type of technology that scaled very differently from the software, from the ITs. They have different structure. How do we tell that story? That's also a key part of to make things happen. And this make this energy transition happen.
Yeah, true. Yeah, the impact, right? So to let people to understand this and follow or act. Storyteller. I guess you guys are all good storyteller as well. So I think we are actually touching some points about career development. So as Haibin mentioned, like a huge money or huge investment pour in this direction, and we gotta act. So how how would individual like a student, a postdoc, or even a young professional in tech prepare to act or like to play a big role? So what do you think the essentials, or how to shape oneself to be ready? What do you think about this? I think I asked very general, but you guys can give some insights. How about Xin? Can you start from the?
Yeah, thank you. It's it's such a big question, and
yeah.
And even us every day, we're still thinking like, how can we improve ourselves further? What I really see that in the industry that we are investing in is, it's extremely important to have somebody really very dedicated to have their solution to have it differentiated from the others. So because it's easier these days for people to have a lot of the information on the internet, very high quality information. People can be trained in a way that they can master a field very easily. So how make yourself to different from the others, how to differentiate your solution. So this has to be the top one. I think what Dr. Xu has mentioned. The first one, you have to do really great in what you do. But secondly is in order to put the solution and to scale it up, and to make sure that your product will really reach the final kind of B2B or B2C consumers. It's a long journey. And within it, there's a lot of individual and commercial decisions. So a founder or somebody really has an ambition to be a startup, a great company. That's really something that's extremely important. Because, for example, recently I'm working on some company with a solid state battery, and they really have they are really a great group of engineers, and their solution is it's quite promising with a lot of good results, much advanced than many other competitors. But then everybody kind of know that solid state battery is so critical and important. It will be the game changer for the battery industry. But there are so many different solutions. That there's like a sulfur, there's a polymer, there's different solution, and each solution there are different kind of sub solutions. And so for the one company to working on one sub solutions, and for the industry OEM are looking, they are hedging and looking at different solutions. They probably will take into consideration different factors. So for a startup, should really cannot only focusing on the technology, but also to look at the ecosystem and landscape of this technology in a wider scope of the supply chain, about who will be the OEM that is willing to be onboarding. So those are the really skills an entrepreneur that need to have in the future in order for the company to go very far. And then at the end, I think that's something I kind of learned for myself as well. It's I grew up in China. I'm brought up in China, in the Chinese ecosystem. I started my career in PetroChina. I was in big institutions. So very often we kind of gave up our own individual critical thinking to the collective decision and thinking, especially in the big corporates. Very often, when we do M&A, where are we going? What kind of route do we go? It's kind of collective decision somewhere. But I think, working on the startup and all this, you kind of know that in the end, you always have to decide on your own whether do you think this is going to work in the end, the technology, the market, the commercial, the people. So I think that's also something we should keep on contact and never being far from what is our independent thinking.
Yes. Well, that's very good sharing. Thanks so much, Xin. How about Haibin and Tony? You guys have something to share with us, or your experience, or your idea how to develop, how to prepare, how to develop oneself into this change.
Yeah. So given the time where, so I'll be very, very brief, and beyond what I just said earlier about technical capabilities and collaboration, project management, all that. I'll just say the key to all of those is really, it may be too popular an idea now, a growth mindset, right? So there was books about it. Satya Nadella of Microsoft keeps talking about it a lot as well. But it's really, really true. A growth mindset and lifelong learning is really, really critical, no matter if you want to have a, say, a professional career in a company, or if you want to do a startup, because yeah, the external environment just keep changing and very, very rapidly. So we just have to keep learning all the time.
Thank you. That's
yeah, probably not too much to add from my end. I would say probably the only other thing I would say is in interacting with startups and entrepreneurs for the past few years, what I'm seeing, there are basically two groups of people. There's one group of generalists, and then there's the group of specialists. So for anyone who is interested in this field, you probably want to understand yourself better, whether you want to be a generalist or a specialist. And then from there, you may want to build up your team together and form a team to pursue your passion in certain things. I think for me, that's kind of one thing to highlight. And the only other thing I want to quickly say is I see in the chat box, Mel or Am, they have a few questions regarding the data of carbon emission. So basically, is there a reliable number of that? I have to say, I have seen numbers from wide range from different place to different place. But I would say something that I typically use as a reference is from IEA, International Energy Agency. So they publish numbers regularly, and they sometimes do a public report. And sometimes I tend to use their number for my own analysis of certain things.
Cool. Yeah, I think that there are some more questions, but maybe the time running out, so we couldn't cover all of those. I think it's time for the closing remarks. So maybe let's closing this way. I would like to ask one last question for you guys, and maybe you can give some short answer. And the question is, what would you see our life to be like within 20 years? So what aspect of our everyday life will be affected, will be changed dramatically by the progress of carbon neutrality? I think this is just like a imagination or a big picture, or your assumption. What will you see about this? Tony, you can start first.
I'll jump ahead. I'll say there's so many different levels, right? I think as a human being, as a user of the energy, I would say I would have hoped that my consumer experience is not changing. So for example, just I use a car, right? So I'm driving a gasoline based car. Now, in the future, I may switch to an EV.
You can fly.
Right? So basically, I think probably share ride or whatever. So I think from that perspective, how we deal with our life shouldn't be affected. But then what's changing or what needs to be changed is something behind the scene. So basically, this is what I think, whether it's Shell or Total or us, we are trying to aim for. And while we are making that investment, we want to make sure that as human beings for our life, we are not facing disruptions of anything. We just want to lead the way, give people enough freedom and enough things to do. But then behind the scene, everything has changed, and we were hugging for this carbon neutrality new future. But we need to work together, and we'll see how it goes. I'm cautiously optimistic on that.
Cool. Yeah, please. Yeah.
So I'll give it a try. I'll just mention an angle that personally I feel most passionate about, and that's really energy access and energy equity. So I think, with every huge change like we are experiencing now with energy transitions, there's both opportunities and also challenges. The opportunity of bringing a lot of people out of poverty, right, with energy access. It's related in a major way, but there is also a danger if we don't do it right that may enlarge even the gap of wealth between populations and also between different countries. So what I hope to see, and also from what I've seen in the past years in the United States with all the awareness level really to a new high about equity, that energy will be a space where people will think a lot and actually have a lot of action for equitable access of energy. That if I can only have one wish for the 20 years from now, that will be my wish, which is really equitable energy access and development for global population, essentially.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Xin, please.
Yes, thank you. I think that's such a wonderful question, because I just kept thinking things. I have that question, and still I'm thinking, I really hope that one day we'll sit together physically and we'll share. I think professionally, I would think, here by 2020, in 20 years time, it will be 2041. So the lion's share of the technology and solution will already be there, and the CO2 is already being addressed. There will be only the 10 years rest to get to carbon zero. So literally, like all the renewable energy, the battery, and the extra kind of carbon capture storage, direct air capture, and all the natural-based solutions all together will be a really efficient system. And we don't have to sacrifice and compromise with the way people need to live, to learn, to enjoy life, but at the same time, with a balanced and the carbon neutral kind of system being there. And personally, I mean, I've been working from home a lot and hearing a lot of podcasts. And these days, I really think, actually this kind of a pandemic and all this crisis actually an opportunity for us to really change the society with tools that we already have. I think people probably is going to be more better deep-rooted in their community, because we don't have to really go and sitting somewhere for 8 hours. The life and working patterns will be more flexible, and with tools available for us to really do so. So that actually, I mean, in a sense, we can get reconnect with the land, the people, the community, the local kind of system we have, while at the same time have a better connection and sharing at a global level. So somewhere, I think in the future, our kids will see, look at our parents, they have to go to work and sitting there for 8 hours, and we don't have to really do that anymore. I don't know, I think there are lots of great things to be look forward to, and hopefully we can keep the conversation going offline.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then if there's a chance, let's keep this, maybe like let's check it every several years and see how it goes. That would be interesting. All right, okay. I don't want to say this, but time is up, so I will have to stop here. And thank you so much for all the panelists for your wonderful informational and inspirational sharing. That I guess definitely a lot of things, a lot of values bring to our audience. I hope that we can keep this conversation and in a way, and also everybody think energy things not only about money, it's also about your idea, your passion, and your responsibility to the world. So it's very, very interesting field, and I hope everyone can achieve something and have some contribution to this field. And thank you so much for all the audience. Thanks so much for all the speakers and our team, and it's really great panel discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, and have a good time and for the rest of the weekend. And good evening and good night to Xin, and enjoy the rest of the daytime, Haibin and Tony.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Take care, everyone.